There are moments in the history of warfare when a nation executes a plan so audacious, so psychologically devastating, that the enemy is left staring at their own hands, realizing they have been turned into instruments of their own destruction. For the United States during the darkest days of the Second World War, the battlefield was not merely a muddy trench or a bombed-out city, it was the very minds of the German people. While the Nazi regime boasted of an impenetrable fortress of censorship and absolute control, American intelligence operatives were quietly engineering a masterpiece of deception that would humiliate the Third Reich from the inside out. This was not a weapon of steel or gunpowder, but of paper, ink, and unparalleled cunning. They called it Operation Cornflakes, a psychological masterstroke orchestrated by the Office of Strategic Services, the legendary predecessor to the CIA. The objective was as brilliant as it was dangerous: to force the meticulous, highly organized German postal service, the Reichspost, to unknowingly hand-deliver American anti-Nazi propaganda directly to the breakfast tables of the German citizenry. The Gestapo ruled the streets with terror, ensuring no citizen dared pick up an Allied leaflet dropped from the sky, but the American spies knew that within the privacy of their own homes, opening what appeared to be official business mail, the German people would finally see the cracks in Hitler's crumbling empire. By late 1944, the Allies were already dropping hundreds of thousands of leaflets over German territory, but the psychological warfare officers understood a fundamental truth about totalitarian fear. A German citizen walking down the street would never risk their life to pick up an Allied newspaper lying on the cobblestones, knowing perfectly well that a watching neighbor might report them to the secret police, resulting in an immediate death sentence. The American intelligence officers surmised that the only safe space left in a fascist regime was behind closed doors. To bypass the watchful eyes of the Gestapo, the men and women of the OSS devised a scheme that required absolute perfection. Operating out of Rome, the American operatives scoured pre-war German telephone directories and wartime newspapers, randomly selecting over 2 million names of everyday citizens registered across the Reich. Since the German government tightly controlled domestic correspondence and heavily scrutinized personal letters, the OSS forged their propaganda to look exactly like official business mail, which often passed through the system without censorship. The Rome unit became a shadow post office, forging over 15,000 envelopes a week. The letters were filled with subversive materials and newspapers, such as Das Neue Deutschland, which depicted the German high command as divided, demoralized, and on the brink of total collapse. But the sheer brilliance of the American espionage effort was not just in the message, but in the delivery mechanism, demanding a level of forgery that would paralyze the Nazi authorities if discovered. To make the letters entirely indistinguishable from authentic German mail, the OSS called upon master counterfeiters to recreate the iconic stamps of the Third Reich. While the British had previously forged standard stamps, the Americans took the psychological warfare a step further, creating what became known as the Death Head stamp. At first glance, the 12th Pfennig stamp looked like the standard portrait of Adolf Hitler, but upon closer inspection, the dictator's face was masterfully altered to reveal an exposed, fleshless skull, resembling a rotting corpse. Even more humiliating for the Nazi leadership, the German subscript at the bottom of the stamp was meticulously changed. Instead of reading Deutsches Reich, meaning German Empire, the American counterfeiters engraved the words Fuchsches Reich, which translates to ruined empire. These forged stamps were a silent, terrifying mockery of the Führer, designed to deeply unsettle anyone who received them. The forged letters were then packed into counterfeit mailbags that the OSS had painstakingly created to mimic the exact canvas and markings of the authentic Reichspost bags. Every detail, down to the routing stamps and the type of material used, was an absolute mirror image of the German postal system. With the counterfeit mailbags prepared, the United States Army Air Forces were called in to execute the most dangerous phase of the operation, blending explosive destruction with surgical deception. The plan relied on the precision of the 15th Air Force, specifically the P-38 fighter bombers, which were tasked with hunting down German mail trains making their way across southern Germany and Austria. The first official mission of Operation Cornflakes took place on February 5, 1945, when American fighters strafed a mail train bound for the Austrian city of Linz, completely destroying the locomotive and devastating the freight cars. However, the bombing was merely a distraction. Minutes after the initial attack, a second wave of American aircraft swooped low over the smoldering wreckage, dropping their unconventional payload. They released the meticulously forged OSS mailbags directly into the debris of the destroyed train. The psychological trap was set perfectly. When the German authorities and postal workers arrived to clean up the wreckage and salvage the mail, they unwittingly gathered the American bags alongside their own. Unable to distinguish the authentic canvas from the American forgeries, the Reichspost loaded the propaganda onto their surviving trucks and hand-delivered the psychological poison to thousands of civilians across the collapsing empire. The name Operation Cornflakes was chosen by the OSS with a specific image in mind. They wanted the German citizens to open their mail and read these demoralizing truths while eating their morning breakfast. Between February and April of 1945, the American pilots executed 20 distinct missions, dropping over 320 counterfeit mailbags containing nearly 100,000 forged letters. The success rate of the infiltrations was staggering, proving that the American intelligence apparatus could effectively hijack the very infrastructure of the Third Reich. The operation was so flawlessly executed that the greatest hindrance it faced had nothing to do with German counterintelligence discovering the plot. Ironically, the only real obstacle was the immense success of the Allied bombing campaigns themselves, which had reduced so many German cities to rubble that millions of citizens had become refugees. Many of the forged letters could not be delivered simply because the addresses no longer existed, their intended recipients having fled the devastated urban centers. Yet, for those who did receive the mail, the sight of the death head stamp and the undeniable truth printed on the American propaganda served as a chilling realization. Operation Cornflakes remains one of the most ingenious psychological warfare campaigns in military history, a testament to how American operatives turned the pride of the German Postal Service into a weapon that delivered the absolute certainty of their own defeat. To truly understand the magnitude of Operation Cornflakes, one must look deep into the shadows of the OSS forgery syndicate operating out of newly liberated Rome. The Americans knew that the German postal inspectors were notoriously meticulous, trained to feel the exact weight, texture, and fiber alignment of every envelope that passed through their hands. The OSS could not simply print these documents on standard American paper. That would be an immediate death sentence for the operation. Instead, American intelligence agents had to scour the war-torn continent to source the precise chemical composition of German paper mills and the exact dyes used in Reichspost ink. The Rome unit operated under extreme pressure, essentially functioning as a counterfeit mint, where master engravers worked tirelessly under harsh, low-light conditions to replicate the microscopic details of the 12 Pfennig stamps. They studied the perforation metrics, the watermarks, and the glue consistency, knowing that a single millimeter of error or a slight chemical odor in the adhesive would alert the Gestapo. This was not merely printing. It was reverse engineering the bureaucratic soul of the German war machine, proving that American ingenuity could perfectly clone and corrupt the enemy's most secure systems. But creating the perfect forgery was only half the battle. The Americans still needed to understand the invisible mechanics of the German mail sorting facilities. The Reichspost utilized highly specific, constantly changing cancellation stamps to process domestic mail, a system designed specifically to thwart espionage. To crack this code, the OSS initiated a covert intelligence gathering protocol, filtering through thousands of captured German soldiers housed in Allied prisoner of war camps. The American operatives systematically identified any prisoner who had previously worked as a mail clerk, train conductor, or postal administrator for the Reich. Instead of harsh interrogations, the OSS offered these prisoners better rations and comfortable conditions in exchange for seemingly harmless details about their old civilian jobs. These captured postmen unwittingly handed the Americans the ultimate blueprint to Hitler's internal communications network. The OSS learned exactly how the sorting machines operated, what the cancellation ink looked like on a Tuesday in Berlin versus a Thursday in Munich, and how to route the counterfeit bags so they bypassed regional censors entirely. The Americans were effectively using the enemy's own workforce to build the psychological weapon that would destroy them. When the meticulously crafted American envelopes finally began circulating through the arteries of the German mail system, the psychological impact was devastating, especially for the Nazi leadership. The sudden appearance of the Fuchs's Reich death head stamps inside official mailbags triggered an absolute wave of paranoia within the highest ranks of the Gestapo. Secret police inspectors were dispatched to postal sorting facilities across the nation, desperately trying to find the source of the subversion, completely unaware that the Allied air forces were dropping the mail directly onto their bombed-out trains. German authorities began to suspect their own postal workers of treason, leading to internal witch hunts, arrests, and a total breakdown of trust within the Reichspost network. The fact that the Gestapo could not stop the flow of these letters proved to the German populace that their government was losing its iron grip. Every time a citizen opened a counterfeit letter and saw the rotting skull of their dictator, it was a profound realization that the Allies were not just at their borders, but deeply embedded inside their daily lives. Operation Cornflakes shattered the illusion of Nazi invulnerability, leaving the regime humiliated and choking on its own propaganda, perfectly executing the OSS vision of breaking the enemy's mind long before the final shots of the war were fired.